The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Greetings, everybody. My name is John Raphael. I'm the Director of Educational Services with the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, and we are about to dive into another episode of our National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals Code of Ethics 10-part webinar series. This webinar series is sponsored by obviously the NADSP, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, but also the Regional Centers for Workforce Transformation in New York State, funded through the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. I just have to say, even though we are, this is a timeless webinar that'll be recorded and archived, I do have to say I sit here on September 15th, 2017, and I would be remiss if I don't just say Happy Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week. Woohoo, woohoo, I hear Marin. Just some background, what to expect in these webinars, certainly this webinar. We're devoting 10 webinars to the NADSP Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics is a series of 9 parts, if you will, and those 9 parts are featured. Each of the tenet of the code is featured, and we have a different content expert talking about the code, that particular tenet of the code, just for about 20 minutes. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. But the purpose of these, we really wanted to have some kind of educational tool for direct support professionals that met them where they're at. And a 20-minute webinar is just perfect. It's a time limited. It's a nice chunk of time. These things can be viewed. If you're listening to it live, that's great. But keep in mind, these will also be archived on the RCWT website and also on the NADSP website shortly. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce my friend and colleague, Marin Gibson. Marin is actually joining us from Oregon, Salem, Oregon. And Marin is a person that's going to introduce herself in just a couple seconds, but I'll just say that Marin is not only works for the Oregon Resource Association, and she'll explain what that is in a second, but she's also a faculty member that works with the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, and she has been cross-country working with us, and she is going to give you, I think, a wonderful look into the tenet of integrity and responsibility as part of the NADSP Code of Ethics. So without further ado, I'm going to give you over to my friend Marin Gibson. Here you go, Marin.
Oh, thank you, John. Thanks for that warm welcome. It's always a pleasure doing any kind of learning and education with you guys. So as John said, I'm from the Oregon Resource Association. I'm the Director of Training and Policy Analysis, but I'll tell you what I really am. What I really am is a DSP, and what I really am is a family member of a person with a disability for the last 33 years. And so my passion and my drive comes from a different place. It's deep down in my gut and in my soul. So I've been a DSP for 15 years, and though I'm a training director now, I run a children's foster home for kids with developmental disabilities. So I still am doing DSP roles day in and day out. I've spent about 6 years as a DSP coach for a large provider agency, with a little bit of time as a case manager to get a better understanding and view to have a stronger impact on our workforce. So I'm just going to jump right into it and get into what we're going through. So the NADSP Code of Ethics, this is something that I appreciated because in my time as a DSP, when I would identify how I was going to address the situation, the only tool I used was, would I do this for my sister, or would I be okay with somebody doing this to my sister? And though that's a respectful and a mindful approach, that's not a person-centered approach. And in my opinion now, that's not an ethical approach. And so I really appreciate the NADSP Code of Ethics because it provides people, DSPs, me, myself included, a roadmap for better guidance than necessarily what my sister wants, but what does this person want right in front of me, and what's best for this specific situation. So bounce back with this code of ethics and use it throughout your professional career. The preamble, this kind of sets the tone. It's inviting the expectations and what our goals are to get out of this. Though it's not the ethics, it's just as important, and I would advise you to take some time and go through that and really understand it. So, of course, the challenge with ethics is putting it to work right away in the house, with support, without support, in a difficult situation, in an easy situation. So like I said before, it's not the handbook of the profession, but rather it's a roadmap to assist us in staying the course of securing freedom, justice, and equity for the people we support, for ourselves, and for the community that we're interacting with. So I'm going to jump into integrity and responsibility with you guys. As a DSP, I will support the mission and vitality of my profession to assist people in leading self-directed lives and to foster a spirit of partnership with the people I support, other professionals, and the community. So this is a weighted ethic because it's all about you. I appreciate this ethic because you don't have to depend on another person to operate with integrity and responsibility. It's a standard that you can hold of yourself. And to summarize this, when we work with DSPs, we say it's doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. But what does that look like? So when we go through the bullet points under integrity and responsibility, I'm not going to read them to you because you can read, but also because I want to talk to you about how this works is how you empower it to work. You are holding yourself to a standard, and though you have a supervisor and though you have laws and regulations that you have to live by, that does not determine the actions every day, every second with the people you're supporting. And these tenets do. And so things like actively seeking advice and guidance, recognizing the importance of modeling valued behaviors to the people I support and my coworkers, this is something that lies within you and is something that you have to uphold. So after this opportunity in this webinar, go back to this ethic and really read it and go through it and identify what does it mean to you in your position with your relationships and your strengths that you have specifically. So doing the right thing when nobody's looking. This is how I approach my job tasks and upholding the tenet of integrity and responsibility. It's an acronym. It's RIGHT, and we all want to do the right thing, but like I identified before, the right thing for me is not the right thing for the person supported, nor is that the right thing for the next person I'm supporting. So if we jump into this, if we're just remembering doing the right thing and thinking of that, R is recognizing, is this an ethical dilemma? Is this somebody wants an extra carrot, or is this somebody wants to put a tattoo on their body? Is this a life or death issue, or is this just somebody trying to assert some autonomy in their life? I is identifying the varying points of view, perspectives, and feelings. So when I was looking back at how this would make the person feel, all I reflected on was my sister. And this is asking you to reflect on multiple points of view and perspectives and feelings. So oftentimes this is the person you're supporting. This is you as a DSP. This is your coworkers. Maybe this is the people that love the people you're supporting, the family members of the people you're supporting, the perspectives and feelings of the community, of other people living in the house. It really depends on the situation, whose points of view and feelings and perspectives you're identifying. But do guarantee yourself there's more than just one, and there's more than two. It's not just you and the person supported in this process. There's multiple people involved in this process. So G is gathering your resources and support and looking to the code of ethics. So our resources can look like our teammates, it can look like our house manager, but this can also, keep in mind, this can be community professionals such as doctors or volunteers. This can be members of the church or members of a different professional affiliation such as the NADSP or Anchor, or whatever resources are applicable to that situation. And then of course, as a DSP, the code of ethics is always a resource. So when you're diving into a situation, if you're acting with integrity and responsibility, you're going to be looking back to the code of ethics and identifying, am I supporting advocacy? How does this look with self-determination? Am I being respectful? So this will bounce you back and forth to gather your resources through each ethic and how to apply it. H is, it's pretty simple. It's having a plan. When we go at a situation and we haven't planned out what we're going to do, oftentimes things go wrong. Even when we plan what we're going to do, things go wrong. So having a plan makes us more prepared, and we can then reflect later for better learning when we have a plan and we've executed it, what we're going to do differently. So T is take action. Of course, you cannot sit and have a great plan if you're not going to create movement with it. So I'm going to put this to work for you guys. If you were using the right method, and this was a scenario that you were experiencing, I want you to really explore how you would support this. So if you're a DSP working a swing shift with Frank, he's not somebody you've supported before. This is not something that's rarely happens because there's so much turnover. This happens often. We're jumping in and filling slots where we need to be, and it's not typically where we know people. So you're supporting Frank as his DSP, and he wants to take the last $5 out of his pouch to go out to dinner with a woman that he asked to be his girlfriend. And so this is not, you don't know anything about this situation. You don't know about the girlfriend. And you know, you've taken your 5 minutes to read Frank's book, but you still don't know Frank that well. So your surroundings are you're working with another DSP, and there are 4 other people living in a home. How do you approach this situation using the right method and upholding integrity and responsibility? So if we go back to the right method and we dive into this scenario, recognizing, is this an ethical dilemma? Well, I don't know, it's hard to tell. An ethical dilemma can be identified if you Google it or if you look it up in Webster's. You will see it's something kind of heavy, having moral duty or ethical intent. And really, how we identify it is there more than one right answer? Which, in the role of a DSP, that's pretty common. We could say, yeah, Frank, go ahead. We could say, I don't know, Frank, that's your last money and you have to go buy your shampoo. So is this an ethical dilemma? I would say, yeah, because there's more than one way to satisfy people. If we are identifying varying points of view, perspectives, and feelings in this scenario, we're going to talk to Frank, see how Frank feels. We're going to talk to the other DSPs in the house. We're going to see what's going on for dinner. If we're leaving another DSP with 4 people supported, we need to make sure that we are gathering how they feel about that and how we can be supportive of the home environment if in fact we are going to leave. G, if we're gathering our resources and support, maybe we can look in Frank's book and see his financial plan. Maybe we can look at some past log notes really quickly and see if he has a relationship with the person. We could look at the calendar and see if it's a date that is currently planned. We can, again, ask our fellow DSPs. We can ask our manager. We could even reach out to the behavioral team if we have access to them. And again, bouncing back to the code. If we're going to support Frank's self-determination, how are we going to go about this in that scenario? If we're going to advocate for Frank, how are we going to do that? What does that look like? And so if H, we're going to have a plan, my plan would be to talk to the people around me, talk to Frank, see how we can make this work. It doesn't seem detrimental to his health, and it seems like it might be a fun experience for Frank and I both. And my next step would be to take action. And sometimes we laugh about when I work with people about doing the righter thing. So RIGHTR. So that is taking an opportunity to reflect. So if I made a plan through using the right method and I completed that plan with Frank, I would take an opportunity to look back and think, well, how did that go? You know, was the whole entire house a disaster when I left because I left 4 people supported with 1 DSP? Did it go well? Did Frank never even have a girlfriend and Frank and I were just ending up going out to dinner? You know, I'd take that time maybe on the drive home from work or the next morning when I'm getting ready just to think, you know, what was great about that situation and what would I do differently? So something that I think is really using integrity and responsibility is the process that you take. As a DSP, there are times when we do our job completely to the fullest of our capability, and the outcome is not what we were looking for, what we were working for, or what the person wanted. There are times when we are really functioning as a solid direct support professional, and the person that we're supporting ends up in jail. or they end up injured, or they end up sad and unhappy. And that does not mean that we did not do our job, and that does not mean that we weren't ethical, or that we didn't use our code of ethics, or that we didn't operate with integrity and responsibility. Sometimes we cannot just only support success. We have to support whatever comes, and in life, oftentimes that's not always perfection. So again, create an opportunity and expectations of ourselves to reflect, because when we can reflect on how it went, we can build better skills for the next experience that comes along. So part of this ethic is about investing in other people. To operate with integrity and responsibility, I believe as a direct support professional, you need to get outside of the home. You need to get outside of the relationship of just you and the person supported. I know it feels great when they look forward to you, they love you, they miss you, but what's even greater is when that's not a paid person. When somebody just comes to their house because they miss them, that's not being offered money. When somebody just calls them because they miss them and they want to hear their voice. So when we are thinking about operating with integrity and responsibility, we need to purposefully and mindfully assist them in investing in other people. So we are one person who is charged with the responsibility of supporting nearly all aspects of the people that we're supporting, all aspects of their lives. So if we just take one moment and we think, what makes us smile? Think about your own time. Think about yesterday. What made you smile yesterday? I can bet you there was people involved in that situation. It's all about people. We can have all the money in the world and we can buy all the materials and we can still be lonely. So we must mindfully grow and strengthen relationships and partnerships with people outside of paid supports. I know it feels great to have a strong bond with the person you're supporting, but what feels even greater is when you see that person you're supporting with an unpaid support that they have a strong bond with. So, you know, this is the community, this is our teammates. You know, we are on the front line, we're there every day. I know turnover is difficult, and when we are operating with integrity and responsibility, we are investing in our teammates also, which in turn is extremely helpful for the people we are supporting in focusing on their lives instead of focusing on all the people that are leaving their lives. So here we're back to our bullets of integrity and responsibility. If we look at the method that I just provided you with, and we look at these bullets, do we think that the right method covers most of these bullets? If we look at even the first one, be aware of my own values and how they influence my professional decisions. Well, that would be the I in the right? We're identifying varying points of view. So that's being aware of my point of view, but also other people's point of view. If we skip down a couple and we say, we look at the bullet, advancing my knowledge and skills through ongoing professional development and lifelong learning. That's the reflection aspect of it. And that's the having a plan. So if we jump down to the second to the bottom, recognize the importance of modeling valued behaviors to coworkers, people I support, and the community at large. I'll tell you the right method is really helpful for me as a DSP, but I'll tell you a little secret also. This is also supporting informed decision making with the people you support. So if you use this right method with the person that you're working with, you are modeling good behavior to the people you support, to your coworkers, to the community, because you're involving the person you support, you're educating them to make their own decision, but also this is the process of supporting informed decision making. So, in conclusion, integrity and responsibility. To me, this is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And I take it another step further. Not only am I going to do the right thing, and I'm going to take time to determine what the right thing is, I'm also going to take the time to reflect later on and identify, how could I do this differently? What can I draw from this scenario to use in the future? So as a DSP, you know, be mindful of the people you're supporting, you know, take care of their resources, be respectful, help them have good personal hygiene, but also look at yourself as a person and look at the relationships of the people around you and recognize and value that if we are working with integrity and responsibility, we are setting the people we support up for a future without us. So thank you. If there's any questions, feel free to pipe in. I would love to answer them.
Wow, Aaron, that was Marin, Marin and Aaron, because I know Aaron's with Marin, but don't worry about that. Wow, I think what you did in less than 20 minutes, you put a real, I think a real focus on the integrity and responsibility in a way that, frankly, I love the right method. I haven't really. I've heard of it, I've used it, but I haven't used it recently. It's a powerful mechanism when you do that acronym, the right acronym. And
I love it. You can do it on the fly, or you can sit down with your team, and it can be a long hour-and-a-half discussion. You know, you can run through that if Frank actually just punched you in the face instead of wanting $5, you can run through that right method. Or you know, if somebody wants a hug and you don't know them very well, you can run through that right method and just really quickly come up with an action with intent.
Yep, I agree. So thank you, Marin. This is great. I have a question. I don't think we have any questions yet from our audience, but I'm thinking, oftentimes a lot of DSPs, they do work not in a vacuum, right? So they're working, and maybe they're working, and generally, you know, a lot of DSPs work with some very challenging situations and with folks that and people that present maybe violence or you know, some level of intensity, right? But I'm thinking, and generally DSPs, they're fine with that. It's oftentimes I get the questions, what do you do when a coworker is problematic? Whether a coworker is not following the rules, or a coworker is coming in, maybe it's just something as minimal as coming in late, or maybe it's something as, you know, a coworker is, you know, dealing drugs, you know, outside the group. Can I ask, how do you take this particular code and put it to that situation? I'll just throw that at you.
Well, really, I appreciate that question, because that's a good point. That yes, I don't know how many of you have left the people you support in comparison to how many of you have left the team that you're working with. So yes, this is a great method, and it helps to be collaborative with your teammates. So I am that person in my early 20s that stood with their hands on their hips and their eyes bugged out and said, "And why didn't you take the trash out? You were here all night," right? But that's not inviting collaboration, nor is it inviting discussion. So when we go through the right method, even just in that, is that an ethical dilemma? Well, probably not, because it's just the trash, right? If we identify varying points of view, maybe the Awake Overnight had a really bad night. Maybe everybody was up. Maybe somebody was sick. Maybe somebody told him he can't empty the garbages at night because it's not safe to leave the people supported in the home. If we're gathering our resources, maybe we're looking around and we're seeing, is there a lot of chaos going on? Is he a new person? We're asking our supervisor, is there a way that we can support this better? Right, if we're having a plan, we're gonna be mindful about our interactions with that person that's just irritated us. So instead of standing there with their hands on their hips and bugging out their eyes, we're gonna be mindful, right, about how we talk to this person, inviting some collaboration, some discussion, because ultimately we want a positive relationship with this person after we've sorted this out.
Yeah. That's yeah. I hear you. I'm also this as I was listening, I'm thinking about when we hear about direct support professionals, or often when we read about direct support professionals in the media, it's very negative. Often it's stuff that deals with criminality and pretty nasty stuff. Those are a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of direct support professionals in the United States, and certainly in New York State, where, you know, this webinar kind of emanates from New York State. And in fact, in New York State, we're the only state that has something called the New York State Justice Center. And that's a law enforcement agency. It's a state law enforcement agency that absolutely goes after and prosecutes and investigates all these harsh things. So, but that's one thing, and I think that sensational stuff is one thing. I think it's more important to see this, and you painted it wonderfully, to see the code of the code of ethics that is about integrity and responsibility. It's really not about necessarily the heinous stuff, because that's pretty clear. You know,
Mhm.
abuse and neglect and theft and those things, they're pretty straight ahead and clear. And if something is done to a person that's supported in and around those things, so, you know, let's prosecute and get rid of that person. Um, I think this is more powerful and useful in the situations you just described, you know, like, say, wow, yeah, somebody did fell asleep, you know, on the overnight, but do we know why? Somebody did, you know, maybe responded a little bit harshly back to somebody that they supported, maybe used a curse word. You know, where do we draw the line? And I think, do you think, let me ask you, do you think that using not only the right method, but certainly all the rest of the code, um, do you think that can help in those situations?
I do, because of course our first reaction is our own feelings, and our own feelings are created from our past experiences. So if we don't, if we were raised with somebody cursing at us all the time, we're not going to look at that situation like it's abusive, right? Or if we were raised in that environment, you know, we're going to be identifying feelings differently. So yes, I definitely use the code of ethics as a roadmap of where do we draw the line, and really it's taking the code of ethics and viewing it from the person supported. So if I was raised in an environment where people curse all the time, maybe I'm not offended by that DSP cursing with the person that they're supporting. But what is the person supported? How is it? How are they taking it?
Yeah.
You know, how are they processing that? And what does that feel like to them? And so, yeah, I think that using the code of ethics, you can go through every one of those tenets, and for each scenario that's in front of you, if you're doubting if it's abusive or not, really recognize that. I will be honest, and I will not throw out any names, but there are some wonderful DSPs that support people that that cursing and brunt language is their preference. And so they'll say, you know, things in a little rougher tone, and that's a person-centered support that's being provided. Those people want that kind of language and that kind of manly guy to guy, you know, exchange. And so really I think that it has to be situational. Yes, of course, follow follow the rules and the guidelines that are in place through federal mandates and through your state, but really look at what does this look and feel like to the person supported, not through your eyes, through their eyes.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have any, I don't think we have any questions yet, but that's, you know, I've got maybe one more comment and, you know, you can maybe wrap it up. I think once again, we see, and you just illustrated it in this, you know, this last half hour, that direct support as a profession is very messy, and it's not neat, it's not tidy. There's not little boxes we put things in. But it's funny, right, Maren? Sometimes the regulations and sometimes the rules and policies kind of make us think that we can. And I don't think we can. I just think it's impossible in the human services generally, but certainly in the world of supporting people with disabilities, I think we need something as a roadmap. And I think what you did and what you illustrated today was a great example of how we can use integrity and responsibility as a code to assist in these situations and these times when we're when we need to do the right thing and nobody's looking. We need to, you know. So
yeah. Well, I will tell you, as a DSP, you know, I did a lot of things with really clear intention, and when people would ask me, irritated because of the outcome, you know, a lot of times they'd say, why? And I'd say, I don't know, it felt right. And so I really appreciate the code of ethics and the right thing, because I can break it down for them and say, well, I thought it was right because I looked at A, B, and C. I talked to, you know, this person, this person, and this person. And so it really gives us something to fall back on so that people can see we are following a process, we are being intentional about our work, and it doesn't always go right. So please use this in the future. This will work as much for you as you work it for yourself. So use it as something to fall back on, because we are typically have great intentions and have great skill and education in our efforts. And it doesn't always look like that in the outcome, because unfortunately, the equation is not clear because we are dealing with people. So please use this to support yourself.
Awesome. Maren Gibson and her accomplice out there, Aaron Stark. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you next time. And so here we go. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks everybody. Take care. Have a good one.